That moment after a breakup when you look back and you just think, what if? What if it wasn't the relationship that was broken, but just our timing or maybe our approach? That temptation to try again is so intense.
Yeah, it is. It's really intense.
It's driven by loneliness, that powerful familiarity, or I don't know, just that kind of romanticized memory of the good old days.
It's arguably the most complicated crossroad in relationships. You're trying to calculate future potential while you're being weighed down by all these past failures.
Exactly.
And when you're considering getting back together, you don't need sentimentality. You need a clear-eyed psychological map.
Yes. So that's our mission here today. For you, the thoughtful person who's navigating that really complicated landscape, we've gone through a stack of sources looking at, reconciliation rates, the warning signs, the psychological trap, all of it. And we're going to give you a clear, fact-based framework to help you figure out if trying this intentional rebuild of your relationship is feasible, wise, and, most importantly, if it's actually healthy.
And let's start by just grounding this in statistical reality, because the odds, well, they can be pretty challenging.
Okay.
We see this question a lot in big psychological studies. What percentage of couples actually try again? And the studies show it's only about 30% of exes who even attempt it.
30%? Okay, that's still a decent chunk of people taking the risk.
It is, but here's the crucial part, and this is where it gets really tough. Only half of those couples, so we're talking about 15% of all breakups overall, only half of them stay together permanently.
Wow. Only 15% succeed. So the other 85% who try, what's pulling them apart the second time? Is it the same old problem?
It's usually a combination. They often fail to identify the real root cause of the first split, or they just revert so quickly to those old destructive conflict patterns because they haven't learned any new skills.
So it's the exception, not the rule.
It is absolutely the exception. If you're going back, you're trying to get into that top 15%, which means the effort and the commitment to change has to be, well, profound and really intentional.
Okay, so before we even get into all that effort, we have to deal with the non-negotiables. We have to identify the huge red flags that just preclude any healthy attempt at a restart. When do you just have to walk away, no matter how much you miss them?
Right. We have to establish boundaries here.
Yeah.
If abuse was present, and we mean physical, emotional, verbal, financial abuse, reuniting is just ill-advised, that's non-negotiable.
Right.
The sources are crystal clear on this. These toxic behaviors, they so rarely disappear without extensive, long-term individual therapy. And you shouldn't be the partner who's there to, test that recovery.
And I'm assuming the same goes for substance issues.
Absolutely. If there's an active substance abuse issue, treatment and sustained resolution have to come first. You can't build stability on a foundation of unresolved addiction. It's an impossible burden to place on the other partner.
So those are the big traumatic issues. What about the quieter cracks? The things that might signal you're just doomed to repeat history?
That really comes down to what we call fundamental misalignment. The key is to distinguish between things that can change, like, say, poor communication, and things that are, well, they're very unlikely to change.
Like what?
Core values, major life goals, like where you want to live, whether you want to have kids, huge differences in how you see money, or just fundamental personality traits that are unaligned. Change is just not likely there.
That's such a critical distinction.
Yeah.
Are we dealing with a temporary behavior or like a permanent difference in who you both are?
Precisely. Personality traits are sticky. If the split was caused by a fundamental difference in how you view the world, reconciliation might just be postponing the inevitable.
Okay, let's talk about motivation, because I think a lot of people confuse loneliness with genuine love. If the drive to get back together is purely based on fear of being single or just the convenience of having someone there, that's an incredibly weak foundation, right?
It's a guaranteed false start. Loneliness gives you energy, but it doesn't give you direction. If the motivation is just that, wistful thinking, convenience, or what researchers call attachment security, that familiar feeling of not being alone, you're just investing in comfort, not in a real relationship repair.
So what does a strong foundation look like then? What signals genuine potential?
The reasons have to be external to fear. So good reasons would be shared love and respect is still undeniably there. Or maybe the breakup was caused by external factors that are now resolved, like long distance or a crazy work schedule.
Right.
But the most vital signal is proven: significant personal growth by both people and the active resolution of past issues during the time you were apart. If you haven't taken time to reflect and learn new skills as individuals, you're just hitting rewind on the same movie.
Which brings us to the really tricky, often agonizing part of this whole thing, trying to decipher whether your ex is actually signaling genuine interest or if they're just nostalgic,
Yeah.
or worse, playing games. Our sources point out this great paradox. Sometimes the best way to get an ex's interest is to actually move on, to heal, and to give them the space to feel your absence.
That is the essential insight. You have to focus on yourself. But while you're doing that, you still need data to distinguish hope from reality. So we can break their signals down into tiers to help you calibrate your expectations.
Okay, let's start with the strongest signals. We'll call this Tier 2 interest. This is where they're probably actively thinking about reconnecting.
Right. Tier 2 means they are initiating regular personal contact, and it has absolutely nothing to do with logistics like bills or picking up their stuff.
So not, we need to figure out the phone bill.
Exactly. This contact often involves them sharing vulnerabilities, treating you like an intimate partner again. You might see visible jealousy if you start dating other people, or they start creating these repeated kind of transparent excuses just to talk or see you.
Like the classic, hey, did I leave my favorite blue shirt at your place?
Yeah.
Even though they know perfectly well they didn't.
That's it, exactly. They're engineering contact points. But the absolute clearest signs involve accountability and talking about the past. If they apologize for what went wrong and they own their mistakes, and really importantly, they can tell you the behavioral changes they're making, that signals real change.
Not just, I'm sorry you were hurt, but something like, I realize now I was controlling and I've started therapy to work on my insecurity.
Precisely. That's the difference. And watch for them prolonging conversations. If they keep asking you open-ended questions just to keep you engaged long after the chat should have naturally ended, that shows a real desire to maintain closeness.
What about them not returning your stuff?
That's another big one. If they refuse or delay giving your things back, it can be a subtle, maybe even unconscious tactic to keep that lifeline open, to know they have to see you again eventually.
Okay, so what about the weak signals? The Tier 3 behavior that might just be noise or worse, manipulation.
Tier 3 suggests, maybe some lingering thoughts, but absolutely no active pursuit.
Yeah.
This is stuff like sporadic contact about random things, reaching out only on birthdays or holidays, or just passively watching all your social media stories without ever starting a real conversation.
That's just noise.
It's just noise. Don't read too much into that alone.
And we have to talk about the false positive trap. I'm talking about breadcrumbing. If I get a text at 11 p.m. that just says, saw this movie, made me think of you, is that real interest or is that just noise?
That is noise. That is often breadcrumbing. Breadcrumbing is low effort, sporadic contact, an occasional hey text, a late night message that requires zero commitment from them. It's often just a tactic to keep you warm as a backup option while they explore other things.
So it's not real.
No. Real interest requires consistent effort and escalation towards spending real substantive time together where they're being vulnerable and actually seeking repair.
So if I'm constantly trying to decode ambiguous behavior, the answer is probably no.
Precisely. If they wanted you back, you would know it. They would make it clear. And there's a timeline fact that backs this up. Most exes who successfully get back together show these real, undeniable Tier 2 signs of interest within about 2 to 4 months of the breakup.
Only 2 to 4 months.
Right. If you're past the 6-month mark and the signs are weak or they're just not there, the odds drop dramatically. The initial motivation for change has usually faded by then.
The thing is, the reason decoding all this is so tough is that our own brain is actively working against us. It's pushing us toward getting back together, even when it might be a terrible idea. We have to talk about one of the most powerful cognitive barriers, the escalation of commitment, which people probably know is the sunk cost fallacy.
This is such a devastating trap in relationships. Escalation of commitment is that irrational pattern of continuing to invest resources, time, emotion, effort in something, despite all the evidence that it's failing.
Can you give us an analogy outside of love? How does this play out?
Sure. Think about that terrible movie you paid $15 to see. 20 minutes in, you know it's awful, but you feel like you have to stay till the end. Why? Because you already paid the $15, and if you leave, that money feels wasted, so you throw good time after bad money.
Okay, now translate that to a relationship that lasted 5 years.
That 5 years is the massive sunk cost. You feel this irrational pressure to keep investing more time and emotion to avoid the complete loss of those years. The threat to your ego of admitting you invested 5 years in something that failed, It's incredibly powerful.
So you keep investing to justify the past, not to optimize for a happy future.
Exactly. It's an exercise in ego protection, not relationship assessment. And the brain makes this even more complicated even if you do get back together. Psychologists talk about our hardwired negativity bias.
Right.
Our brain is designed to remember danger and threats way more intensely than comfort and safety. As one source puts it, our brains are Velcro for the negative and Teflon for the positive.
That is a great analogy. But how does that sabotage a reconciliation attempt?
It means that when you're in that intentional rebuild and a small familiar conflict happens, what we call a resonance, your brain immediately scans for danger. It throws up massive red flags that the old pattern, the original reason for the breakup, is happening all over again, even if the situation is totally different.
So let's say the original breakup was about poor boundaries. If my ex now leaves one dirty dish in the sink, my brain instantly jumps back to the years they never helped me clean, and I see that one dish as this massive sign of failure.
Precisely. Your brain is trying to protect you by triggering fear. It focuses only on the similarity, the single dirty dish, not on the genuine shift in their behavior over the last 2 months. That anxiety just sabotages growth because it pulls you into the state of high alert based on past trauma.
Which is why reconciliation can never be about just picking up where you left off.
Never. You have to intentionally focus on creating an entirely new operating system for the relationship. And this means confronting the way you handle conflict, not just what you fight about.
And the clearest blueprint for destructive conflict patterns comes from Dr. John Gottman's research, his 4 horsemen of relationship failure.
They are lethal negativity. The first is criticism, which is attacking your partner's personality or their character instead of complaining about a specific action.
So instead of saying, "I'm upset you didn't take the trash out," you say, "You are so lazy and irresponsible. You never think of anyone but yourself."
Perfect example of criticism. The second is defensiveness, which is just denying responsibility and trying to defend yourself from a perceived attack, often by making excuses or, counterattacking.
And the third, which you said is the most lethal, is contempt.
Contempt is devastating because it conveys disgust. It's a feeling of moral superiority over your partner. It just strips all the respect away.
What does that actually sound like in an argument?
It sounds like sarcasm, cynicism, hostile humor, name-calling, and really critically nonverbal cues like eye-rolling. It's the highest predictor of failure because it signals you despise your partner as a person. And while it can be reversed, it takes intense, immediate awareness and humility.
And the fourth, which I know affects men more, is stonewalling.
Correct. Stonewalling is withdrawing from the interaction, physically or emotionally, just disengaging, shutting down, becoming unresponsive. And yes, studies show men are consistently more likely to do this, but these behaviors aren't always conscious choices. They're often symptoms of an underlying physical state of overwhelm.
That physical state being diffused, physiological arousal, or DPA, what he calls flooding.
Yes. Flooding is what happens when conflict triggers your fight or flight system. Your heart rate can speed up dramatically, often over 100 beats per minute. And when you're flooded, your ability to process information just plummets. Your body favors instinct over creative problem solving.
So if you recognize that feeling in yourself, or you see it in your partner, you know your body has physically shut down your ability to listen and be rational. So soothing has to be the only response.
It is. The goal is just to drop that physiological arousal. And the only way to do that is to withdraw from the interaction for a scheduled break.
A scheduled break.
Yes. And that break must be at least 20 minutes because that's how long it takes for adrenaline and cortisol levels to drop. And crucially, you have to have a commitment to return to the discussion at a specific time. That's what prevents the break from becoming silent punishment or just another form of stonewalling.
That focus on intentional communication brings us to the final stages of a successful recommitment. Reconciliation has to be so carefully planned around pacing and your priorities. I mean, pace discrepancy is a challenge in any new relationship, but when you're trying to forge a second chance, that's got to be magnified.
It's true. Partners are rarely ready for the next milestone exclusivity, moving back in, telling friends at the same speed. You've hit these milestones once before, and the urge is to rush back to things as usual, but that rush is dangerous. You have to move slowly, acknowledge the awkwardness, and talk explicitly about what each of you is ready for next. Don't assume.
And we should prioritize values over goals. The goal is easy. Get back together. But the process of how you get there matters so much more.
It does. The process has to be guided by clear values, which serve as your compass. Values are how you want to feel and behave. honesty, safety, transparency, humility. By being guided by values, you set clear boundaries for this fresh start, making it feel less like a transaction and more like building a stable, ethical foundation.
This sounds like incredible emotional labor, especially when it comes to the past. Forgiveness is a huge part of this.
And it requires deep self-compassion. Genuine reconciliation requires forgiving your partner for the pain they caused, but also the huge, often forgotten work of forgiving yourself.
What do you mean by that?
It often means tying your past self-abandonment or unhealthy patterns to your core wounds and offering yourself massive doses of compassion. Forgiving yourself for ignoring your own boundaries or for staying when you were routinely ignored.
Only when you address that internal shame can you stop being so defensive.
Exactly. When you can regulate your own shame and defensiveness, you can finally bear witness to your partner's hurt without it triggering your own fight or flight response. That capacity for shared vulnerability is essential for repairing your history together.
It sounds like serious labor. But we also have some fascinating data on how positive memory can actually help repair conflict. The power of romantic nostalgia.
This is a beautiful piece of research. It's about how memory can be a resource. Romantic nostalgia is defined as a sentimental longing for one's current partner or relationship, specifically.
Right.
And studies show that couples who have high trait romantic nostalgia link positively to closeness and relationship satisfaction above and beyond their actual compromise skills.
So actively recalling the fun times, that initial spark, the shared jokes, that actually strengthens the relationship during conflict. It's not just romanticizing the past.
It's a reparative function. When researchers experimentally induced romantic nostalgia in people, it led to an increased willingness to accommodate during conflict. It helps interrupt that negativity bias by reminding you of the underlying positive story you share. It fosters the intention to repair rather than to flee or criticize.
So you're using your history as glue, not as baggage.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, let's synthesize the crucial takeaways from this deep dive. If you're considering reconciling, first you have to check your motivation. Is it built on real potential and shared growth? Or is it just loneliness and convenience?
Mm-hmm.
And you must look for consistent, undeniable signs of change and accountability, not that low-effort breadcrumbing.
And be hyper aware of that psychological trap. Watch out for the sunk cost bias, which will try to convince you to invest more time in a failing venture just because you already put years into it.
Right.
And remember that solving conflict in this new rebuild requires new skills, specifically avoiding the 4 horsemen and mitigating that DPA by taking those mandatory, scheduled 20-minute breaks.
I think the most powerful framework we found in all the source material really centers on prioritizing growth over grievance. Many couples who succeed at this, they celebrate small victories. They turn a moment that could have gone sideways into what psychologists call a corrective emotional experience.
Instead of reacting when your partner responds differently to conflict than they used to, instead of asking, why couldn't you do this 2 years ago, the mindset has to shift to recognizing and appreciating the effort they are making now.
Try saying this instead. Thank you for giving me now what you couldn't give me then.
That shifts the focus from grievance to growth. It allows you to truly appreciate the upgrade you're building together. Use that lens to evaluate if the relationship you're creating is truly an intentional new version or just an emotional rerun waiting to fail.